Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, welcome to the first plenary panel session of the Global Forum on Remittances, Investment and Development. My name is Liwadin Flis from the Office of a Special Advisor on Africa. I have the pleasure to moderate this panel session. After the amazing statements that we heard, and then all the insights, I think we are so excited to have this session. So the theme of this session will be on harnessing the power of migrants, and then we'll be focusing on addressing some of the misconceptions and trying to highlight some of the opportunities that arise in this context. We'll be hearing about the importance of remittances, but also it should be recalled that in the recent times, these economic contributions of migrants have become increasingly crucial as they send remittances to support their families and communities back home. So the prime example, as it was mentioned this morning, is during the COVID-19 pandemic. In Africa, remittances are also vital components of national economies. They act as a lifeline for families and are especially significant in rural areas. In Africa, migrants sent over 100 billion in remittances last year. But also looking ahead, it is estimated that by 2030, migrants all over the world will have sent over 5 trillion in remittances to families in low and middle income countries. This is a lot of money. So how can these flows be maximized for the benefits of the families, but also for the economy at large? So migrants actually possess the critical potential to contribute to their economies, both for the host countries, but also for the countries of origin. But we should have in mind that there are some misconceptions and also some missed opportunities that often hinder the effective utilizations of this power. So to fully harness the potential of migrants and address the misconceptions, we have gathered for you a distinguished panel of experts representing key stakeholders. Allow me to introduce our esteemed panel members. First, we have Almaz Negash, CEO and founder of the Africa Diaspora Network. Almaz has been recognized as one of the diaspora of the 100 outstanding Silicon Valley women of influence for her work in social innovation. She has dedicated her efforts to informing and engaging Africans in the diaspora, facilitating collaboration with social entrepreneurs and business leaders to improve lives both on the continent and in the diaspora communities. Ms. Almaz, we are very happy to have you on this panel. Joining us next, we have Pedro de Vasconcelos. I think he already introduced himself, but I'm going to introduce you again. So he's the lead technical specialist and manager for the financing facility for remittances as IFAD. So he is internationally recognized expert in migration and economic development. He actively contributes to global policy agendas, placing remittances and financial inclusion at the forefront of major development institutions and government. And then he is the one behind us being here. So thank you, Pedro. We are also honored to have Mr. Dilip Rata, lead economist of migration and remittances at the World Bank. He heads the Global Knowledge Partnership on Migration and Development, in short, GNOMAD. I think for those who are in the research area in remittances, GNOMAD is very known. They have the data, all the data that we've been mentioning today, so it's coming from there. So Dilip is a thought leader in migration and remittances with extensive experience in innovation financing for development. He has been instrumental in establishing GNOMAD and has inspired many startups through his TED Talk on migration and remittances, which have over 1.45 million views. So if you didn't see it, watch it, please. Watch it, it's very interesting. Last but not least, we have Dare Okuju. He's the founder and CEO of MFS Africa, a leading Pan-African fintech company. So his company operates the largest digital payment hub on the continent, connecting over 180 million mobile wallets. Through his work, he enables merchants, banks, mobile operators, and money transfer companies to leverage the ubiquity of mobile wallet for safe, convenient, and cost-effective transactions. So all the benefits that we've been talking about since this morning. In 2017, MFS Africa was named one of Africa's top 10 most innovative companies by the international business magazine Fast Company. Now it's time to delve into our panel discussion, which, as I said earlier, is aiming to uncover the misconceptions surrounding migration, contributions, identify the untapped opportunities. So our esteemed panel members will help us discussing these issues, and they will share with us some of the insights, experiences, and hopefully we try to get some recommendations also. I will be asking a question to each panel member, and they will have a maximum 4 to 5 minutes to address it, and maybe also I will come back with some follow-up questions. So let me start on my left, Pedro. I'll start with you. So drawing from your extensive experience in maximizing the impact of remittances and migrant investments. So can you talk about these misconceptions, especially those related to the nature of remittances, their purpose, and also the mechanisms that are used for sending remittances, but also for diaspora investments. So let's clear out all the misconceptions first before we go into detail. Thank you.
Thank you. All misconceptions, and I'm not sure. Some, yes, and I think there's a classification, and I'll give you my best 3 or 4 over the years, and my apologies for my colleagues already if I'm going to steal already some of those. I'll try to get the most juicy ones out of the way, but I think as you heard it today in this morning presentations, some is, as you say very well, the nature of migrant contributions. These are private flows. We need to understand that. It is people sending to their loved ones, normally family members, back home for a specific purpose. So these are private flows. These are not aid in the sense that governments see it. So this is the first, because still too often we hear, wouldn't it be great to take that amount of funds and put it somewhere else? These are private flows. The second point is what these flows do. In terms of nature. I think the biggest misconception that I've been here for 20 years on this, and I think many will back me up, is these flows are for consumption. And I think everybody in this room, when they hear the word consumption in economic terms, they think about things that are not really useless. Maybe a color TV that is too big, a party that went too hard, maybe a bit too much. This is not the reality of the 1 billion people and their families. Family members that receive remittances know very well what they need. Yet, it's true. Sometimes we need some shoes. Sometimes we like, everybody in this room has a nice color TV, I'm pretty sure. So yes, we do have that type of expense from time to time. But for the majority, as you heard it very well this morning, it is the SDGs. Starting with poverty, you have family fracture. It is one migrant leaving the family behind. This is no fun. That's the reality for the remittance families. And they do that in many cases to address the poverty that they feel like they're feeling at family level. SDG 1, they put food on the table, education, medicine, etc., everything that you heard. So I think this is one that needs to be cleared out once and for all on the nature. One last, well, the third that I would say is not differentiating remittances and diaspora investment. I think this is an important one. It might be the same person that do it, but remittances is a small amount sent for the family, as I just mentioned, for the SDGs, not to invest in a development program. If they have a savings out of that, and we heard it, migrants do invest, recipients also invest, recipient of remittances also save some money. If there's some left over to be either saved or invested is a very good thing. But let's not forget that these are the purpose of remittances. On the other hand, as I think we're going to hear, diaspora investment are the savings of the diaspora abroad that have a connection with their home communities of origin and would like to invest. And it's very important, I think, to distinguish this. I think at the forum we did that. Tomorrow we're going to have 2 tracks to look into that, into those aspects, because it's very important, particularly if we want to maximize, I think these were the words that you use, if we want to maximize these flows, support remittance families or diaspora investments in investing better, more, well, we need to get our message right operationally. I think this is mainly the key messages that I think would allow us to go into the right track in terms of what misconceptions are, and I think we'll have the time to talk on opportunities, but I'll leave it here.
Thank you very much, Pedro, very clear. I think we'll come back to the issue of the misconception later on, and then also on the opportunities, missed opportunities. But let me invite Ms. Almas. We've been talking about the diaspora, and then the contribution that the diaspora is bringing to the economies. And you, as an influential figure in fostering the involvement of the African diaspora and acknowledging also the diversity of the diaspora, because people think that African diaspora is homogeneous, but the reality it's not. So can you tell us more about the African diaspora, and then what are the strategies that you recommend for countries to harness the power of diaspora, while also trying to dispel all the misconceptions around their potential? And also, if you have any other examples around this, I think that will be beneficial for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I am so delighted to be here. Let me just thank the organizers. Pedro, thank you for bringing us together. I know how hard it is to put something like this, but I have never worked with people as your team. So I want you to be proud of what you've done. I think it's incredible, and please, please applaud them, because I think sometimes we underestimate how we got to be where we are, and I'm so proud of what you've done, and I'm very delighted to be with this incredible group of people. I think this question is very important, and for us, the African Diaspora Network, we're based in Silicon Valley in this incredible ecosystem for innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment. We can't do this without such an ecosystem. So to your question, for the diaspora, what does the diaspora need? I don't even have to answer. I mean, we've heard it. We are the most generous philanthropists in the world. Do you know that the narrative of Africans being philanthropists has never been talked about? Because there is always that notion we don't give. And I'm always advocating for my people simply because I know we do. And that's remittances. Let me also start from how we became to be who we are. I am an Eritrean diaspora, married to another Eritrean diaspora. When we started our life 29 years ago, we were just really figuring out how do we buy a house, when do we have children. As soon as we start to see that we were actually getting somewhere, I became restless. Wait a second, now what do we do? Is it just all about us? What else can we do? You think that you are the only one thinking that way. It's actually many, many, many diasporans do. Because you know who you are, where you came from, what you left behind, and so you have this sense of obligation that's so innate that you don't need someone to remind you. However, to your question, you do need an enabling ecosystem in order to provide, whether it's your knowledge, your money, your talent, somebody has to receive it in a way that is conducive for the communities that you're trying to support to make use of it. So yes, it is not only for consumption, but if you don't have any other way of using the remittances to enable to make a sustainable life for your family, you probably have to use it for something that is probably not as useful. Because it's not about giving money only, it's about also educating the community on how to use the money. And I think our friend from India mentioned something, educating the recipient community so that they know how to use the money. So I think there are some gaps that we need to fulfill, but what I'm happy about this conference is there are so many great success stories being told. There is also this incredible sense of acknowledgement of what has failed and what didn't work. If we recognize what didn't work, then we can begin to start to figure out how to make it work. I think what I get frustrated with is we talk about all the beautiful things without really addressing the bad thing. On our continent, let me say this. I'm very delighted to be in Nairobi. So to the hotel yesterday, I said, I really don't really need to go to the stores which I can find them in the US. I just want to go to the markets where I can meet women who are doing this incredible design work that nobody really recognized them as they should. And I did go, and I met this amazing woman who is selling women's clothing in a marketplace. The clothes that she sells would probably have gone for $100 to $200 in the US, but she's selling it for $21 if you translate that money, the local money, to the US dollar. So I think there are these women that get to be supported by remittances, and they're using the remittances to create business for themselves and their family. But there are also the gaps of educating them to even scale up what they do and get what they deserve. So we have some work to do. And I think on the engagement, on the enabling ecosystem, all we are asking, at least I am asking, we are always going to send the remittances. That is not going to stop. Because when your family asks you for something, I know that we will do everything we can do to give and make sure that the money goes. I want to go beyond remittances. I want us to think about not only from where we come from, and then that's the only place where I'm going to invest. No, I should have the opportunity to invest in Kenya, in Ghana, in South Africa, wherever there is an opportunity, just as an investor. And that money, as Pedro mentioned, is not coming from the remittances, it's coming from my saving. I am asking the diaspora to tap into the savings that we have, not all of us, but a lot of us, and use some part of that money to invest in projects, in communities that we want to see scale the work that they do. Otherwise, I fear if we depend only on remittances, we are also creating dependent society. What if the person who is giving the money, sending money to families, dies? Who's going to help that family in that community? They actually have nothing they created. There was no sustainable system in which they could support their family. So if I die, then the family doesn't have anything. That we need to stop. I am not saying stop remittances because I get in trouble all the time. No, keep sending remittances, but also keep digging, and let's look at other ways to invest on the continent so we have a system that is more, the money that is more scalable, because remittances are not scalable because they're transactional, they're one-to-one. We wanted to go beyond. So I would love to have that conversation, but I think this is where the diaspora, at least this is where we are at ADN, and I look forward to learning more and collaborating.
Thank you very much, Almas. I think the key word that you mentioned at the end of your intervention is scaling up. Scaling up, going beyond remittances. Still, remittances are important to support families, but the contribution of diaspora should support more sustainable and resilient societies. So we have the pleasure to have Dilip with us on the panel. And Dilip, from your experience in the field, and then also from your own perspectives. So Almaz was mentioning that remittances are not only money sent, but there are knowledge, there are technical support issues, there are skills, and so many other things. But there are many stakeholders involved in this. There is a value chain. So how can people or these stakeholders involved in this value chain collaborate together to leverage the power of their resources and then to put this to work for their communities?
Thank you. It's been 20 years that I have been looking into remittances and have been surprised every year at their growth and sustained growth. Even during COVID, they did not fall. And one wonders, is it the migration that is doing it, or there is something else going on? And it seems like if I had a title for my talk or for this forum, I would probably say something like, informally, can't keep them down. I don't see any eventuality where remittances would go down in the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I cannot visualize that. So with that out of the way, that important statement, can't keep them down, I would like to just respond to your question, Mr. Chair. Let's say there are 300 million, roughly, international migrants and refugees, another 700, 800 million, 900 million are internal migrants. They all send money. In fact, they migrated so that they can send money. So there is a chicken and egg kind of issue there. Remittances are probably the motivator for migration as well. So with that, no wonder that remittances are large, but then between the diaspora and the country of origin, there are other links, as you pointed out. Remittances are one, but then there is investment, then there is skill transfer, then there is technology transfer, then there is trade, tourism, and then importantly, values and impact on governance back home. We are focused more on the sort of the financial aspects of remittances in this forum today, and I'm so happy to see, Pedro, that IFAD has been leading this in organizing the global forum. So just on the remittances and diaspora investments, 2 points. One, remittances last year reached $647 billion. That's only remittances flowing to low and middle income countries, and that really does not take into account all the informal, unrecorded flows. The true size of remittances is quite likely $1 trillion. And again, after a 10% growth the year before, and prior to that, another 8% growth, meaning the total 20% growth, there is still a growth being projected this year and next year. So remittances are growing, and then there is this whole issue of diaspora investments. People send money home, but they save quite a bit of money, maybe even more, where they are in the destination country. And often that money is parked either as under the pillow, meaning cash, 0% interest rate, and otherwise, those who have bank accounts, and many don't, it is parked in bank deposits. Again, interest rate is zero. So that is where the idea of diaspora bond comes in. And this perennial question of how we can use remittances for productive purposes, I think that question is completely a non-starter. You cannot ask me how I spend my money. Get out of my way. Don't ask me that question, how should I spend money, right? So it is okay to say that the money that I send through the banking system, that leads to financial deepening, financial inclusion, and that money can be mobilized by issuing a diaspora bond. Bond is a financing mechanism, locks the money for 4 years, 5 years for the term, and then you offer an interest rate, and if you invest it for the right reason, a lot of people will invest. That's the idea of the diaspora bond. So with that, that brings us to, here is an idea, a $100 billion financing idea. If you reduce remittance costs from the current 6%, or in Africa more than 8%, within Africa more than 15% cost, right? Sending money from Kenya to Ghana, just calculate it, just try it out. If we reduce remittance costs by, let's say, 5% on a volume of 600 plus billion, we are talking about $30 billion in savings. Diaspora savings are estimated to be more than $500 billion. 1/10 of that, if you're able to mobilize through diaspora bonds, that's $50 billion, already adding up to $80 billion, right? And then if you reduce the costs, fees that migrant workers, especially low-skilled migrant workers, pay to labor agents, all of it is illegal. That fee, if you reduce it, you can also mobilize another $20 billion. I did not even mention philanthropy yet, diaspora philanthropy. So that's a $100 billion financing idea per year. Let me stop with that for now. I'll take on some other issues later.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think it's always a pleasure to hear you talking about these issues. Moving next, we've been talking about the role of innovation, fintech, and so on. And then this morning also, we've heard the experience from India mentioning that many startups that diaspora came back to initiate these startups in the digital sector. So, Mr. Kudjo, as the CEO of the leading Pan-African fintech company, so you have a first-hand experience in leveraging technological innovation for financial inclusion. So, in your views, how can African fintech, through technological innovation and digital solution, unlock the potential that we've been talking about of remittances, but also diaspora investment?
Yeah, thank you very much. First, I want to thank Dilip. Of the 1.5 million views of his talk, probably a few 100,000 came from my company alone. You have been a true inspiration for the work that we do. And I also want to just add a little bit to the misconception that we're talking about earlier, and which is that diaspora and remittance is primarily a North-South affair. And when we stand and we talk about remittance in Africa, it is about how we make it easier and cheaper for someone in New York to send money to Accra. I think Madame Duarte mentioned that my country, Benin, actually received half of the remittances from its neighbors. And if we follow, migration, actually 7 in 10 people leaving a place in Africa ended up in another place in Africa. Yeah. And as we sit here in Kenya, as you mentioned, there's actually no easy way to send money to Benin, if you can do it at all. And if you can do it, it is in the 15% that Dilip was talking about. So one of the misconceptions is that African countries and African governments and African central banks are only at the receiving end. And I would have loved to hear more from the central bank, the governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, on how to make Kenya a better sending market for all the migrant and diaspora people who are living in Kenya as well. So I think that has to be present in the conversation. Now, coming back to your question, so we started the company MFS Africa on the premise literally of making borders matter less. And that means, and our scope of work was primarily Africa. And it is really, how do we leverage the power of technology, what we have seen in countries like Kenya, but across Africa, where the movement of money between cities and rural areas have been dramatically changed by the power of mobile money. How do we extend that across borders, across the continent? And that has been primarily our work. And I think 12, 13 years in, I'm happy to report that a lot of progress has been made. And we continue to believe that the future of how to solve this still belongs to mobile. And there are a few reasons for that. The first one is that migrants do not only need remittances, they actually need connection. So when you leave your country, you need to remain connected, and you need to continue participating in social discourse. You need to stay in touch with loved ones. And mobile or digital technology at large has played a huge role on how you do that across Africa and around the world today. And it's because of that, because mobile, and none of us leave our country now thinking, maybe we need to change everything about the way we communicate. More and more people will keep their WhatsApp account. And when they move from Johannesburg to Lagos or from Lagos to London, they will continue to communicate with this same identity, I will call. We believe the same will continue to be true for money, that we will get to a point where people will be able to move abroad with their M-Pesa account, and they will be able to continue, interact, and remain connected in the environment. So a lot of our work is going into that direction, and again, as I said, I'm happy to report that we are seeing a lot of progress. Where I am a bit worried, and a lot of people talk about how do we accelerate the progress toward the SDG, I'm worried about another misconception, which is that profit is evil. I think we're coming to this probably too much from our heart, not recognizing that actually to make this work, it requires investment. And investment requires profit that you can reinvest. And right now, if you take I would say, remittance industry at large, it is a difficult thing right now. And you will see, those remittance companies on the stock market who are actually suffering from that. And it's not just the remittance companies at the top, it's the whole chain, including things around regulation and how do you do KYC, how do you keep sanction compliance and all that. So I think where I'm worried is that the industry is not being allowed overall to generate profit to be able to reinvest. And sometimes that is because also probably too much intervention from donors. And I'm saying this well aware that, MFS Africa, we are also a recipient of a grant by IFAD, which we are working on, on specific cases to advance financial inclusion. But as an industry in general, if we're going to have a hard talk, we have to also embrace the need for profit from which you can reinvest. I came from the telecommunication industry background, and I think it's largely recognized that that's probably the last real wave of integration, of inclusion that has happened in Africa. But it happened with SIM card costing $100 in Lagos. And of the profit made from that, now it is possible for everywhere across Africa that you will have a base station in the most rural areas in the continent. I'm not advocating that we need to go back and charge $100 on remittances, but I think we have to have hard talk about the need for the industry to actually let the economic reality plays out.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you mentioned the issue about the importance of remittances within the continent, because these are things that one of the misconceptions that the remittances are coming from abroad. So, and then also you mentioned the issue of the difference between from the receiving